I stood at this podium a year ago knowing that a lot had to change. Our organization had lost some confidence from City Council, it lost a lot of relevance from the business community, and I said I wanted to come back in a year's time and be accountable for some results and for some change. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the image and reputation of our city? And before I knew it, I opened my mouth and the truth came out. And I said 1.5 out of 10, sir. 1.5 out of 10. And I can stand here today proud of the work we've done and the changes we've made in the last 12 months. It's just a feeling of aliveness is starting to happen and the momentum is starting to take over. But probably the most important accomplishment, the change that we see and feel the most, is a sense of new confidence and self-esteem and connection that people have and have embraced with their city. What we have here is unique, what we have here is special, and it's our time to take advantage of it.
I'm Melissa Bigstone. I am 22 years old. I have been homeless in my life a couple of times, but I got out of it.
My name is David Bernstick. I'm from Alexander First Nation, and my ethnicity background is Aboriginal. I've recently been homeless before for 3 months. I got kicked out of the program.
I'm April, and I've been off and on the streets since I was 15.
My name's David Botterill. I've been homeless off and on 7 years, and I'm 21 now.
James Digilers, people call me Ducky down here. I am very complicated.
Well, Edmonton is a phenomenally growing city right now. You know, we see people flocking here from all across the country, all around the world for opportunity. And that opportunity exists for most Edmontonians, but not everyone. And I think our challenge now is to figure out how to make sure that every last Edmontonian, including youth at risk, are included in the success and prosperity that comes with living in Edmonton.
Not just new people to the community. We have Aboriginal, we have immigrant, we have peoples with disabilities. We have a number of different people we haven't activated properly, and we need to focus on that in order to get the labor force we need.
It's not acknowledged as an ongoing issue, but there's a lot of youth that are homeless out there because they don't have families to go to. They don't fit. They feel they don't fit.
So awareness is critical. We need to know that it's there. We can't turn a blind eye to the reality, as ugly as it might be. None of us want to see that there are homeless people, especially homeless young kids, but they are out there.
We do a homeless count every other year. We've been doing that for over a decade now. First one was done in 1999, and since 2000 we do it every other year. So the last homeless count that we did before we started to implement the 10-year plan was in 2008. And at that time we had approximately 3,100 people that we found homeless, either on the streets or in our shelters that night that we did the count.
Well, homelessness, I think there are probably a lot of stereotypes about who's homeless, and we know that from our last homeless inventory, there are several hundred what are called unattached youth who are people who no longer live at home. They may be estranged with their families, they may not have families, and who are homeless in our city. And sometimes that's couch surfing, and sometimes it's actually sleeping rough outside. There are also some children as well, and the number's hard to pin down, who are still with their families, who are under the age of 14 or 16. But who don't have housing security. They may be couch surfing as well or sleeping in a car. And so youth homelessness in our city is not necessarily that visible, but it's real. And every time we count it, the numbers should be very upsetting for every Edmontonian to know that people who aren't even 18 yet are homeless in our city. But it's a real issue, and good organizations working with and reaching out to these young people and trying to provide them housing and support services. So it's not all bleak, but the numbers are bigger than people would think.
What you see is with many, many homeless people, and children in particular, is that they don't have that one safe, caring adult in their life to support them when there's a need or a crisis or ongoing supports around education, health, mental health, addictions, and so on. It's shocking and saddening when we think of how many people who live on the street that don't have anyone that they can count on.
The way in which we individualize homelessness is so problematic to seeing the systemic issues that really create the conditions for people to end up in homelessness, that many of those are not their fault, that they didn't have a choice, that no one wakes up in the morning to say, you know, I really wish I was homeless, because that would be cool.
I think a lot of people think that at-risk youth are lazy or want to be there, and I don't think that's the case at all.
Some of the common misconceptions around youth and homeless youth are that they are choosing to be homeless, that they're choosing to be on the streets because it's a fun time, a party, that they want to use drugs, that they're having a good time, essentially. In over 30 years, I haven't met a child yet that I've known to be living on the streets that have said that they've chosen that.
People don't understand what's behind those choices, and that it's not necessarily an easy thing for the youth to be where they're at, and sometimes they didn't make those choices. So I think that's a huge misconception.
My mom and my dad had split up, and she basically came to the city and wanted to start a new life. But the lifestyle that she decided to live wasn't that healthy. She got affiliated with gang members and a really negative lifestyle of constantly drinking and using drugs, and at points neglecting us to the point where she would actually leave us for days without food or water. I know that I felt like, well, all this stuff happened. I realized that these things are not right, and the way that she lived her life wasn't good. And it just added to it. It's like, well, now she doesn't want me. There's something that I must have done. Should I not have been there? Should I just not even exist at this point? I felt everything that I had ever put into my mom was gone at that point. And that was the breaking point in my life when I started to realize, and I started to shut down, and I started to internalize every aspect of the human relationships that I had with people.
That early trauma has had a big impact on their ability to trust others and their ability to make attachments and the way their brains develop. And that ongoing pattern of rejection and abandonment just keeps coming from their parents, perhaps at first because of their struggles. They get into the school, they get in trouble in school, they're rejected, they come into care, their behaviors escalate, they get kicked out, they get rejected again, and they're just coming from this constant rejection, abandonment, and loss that they're having to cope with.
I got kicked out of school because I used to be gang affiliated. I used to choose gangs over my family because my family didn't really care about me, so that's why I'm living on the streets now. It's like my family doesn't really care about me anymore.
Right from the get-go, the youth don't have the opportunities that a lot of other youth have. So they could be born into poverty, generational traumas, addictions, gang life. That's all could be stuff that they have no choice over right from the get-go. And then growing up in those situations creates certainly choices, but not very easy ones that say you and I would have a choice between, say at 12 years old, being asked by your uncle to smoke crack with him, or he's going to beat you up. I mean, what's the choice there, right?
It's a complex web. It's issues related to mental health, issues related to addictions, certainly issues related to poverty, and not just for that individual, but the family situation that they may be fleeing from, abuse they may be fleeing from in a family. There's even some human trafficking, unfortunately, which has brought people here who are underage to be part of the sex trade. And so some very, very complex and multifaceted causes behind youth homelessness. But I think one of the things in common is some kind of challenge with family and some barriers encountered with upbringing. And it might even be as simple as something, it can happen very early. It can be fetal alcohol spectrum disorder that puts a person at a disadvantage for the rest of their life through no fault of their own. It may be because someone didn't get good nutrition while they were growing up, and that impairs brain development, and that leads to antisocial behavior, can lead to estrangement from family. So many, many factors. Each story is unique, and the services that people need in order to be more successful and to stabilize and come off the street are going to need to be tailored for each person.
I don't think you can pinpoint one specific thing, and I don't think it's about creating a formula to say poverty plus young man plus Aboriginal plus violence plus sexual assault plus equals homelessness. Because there are many youth that if you encounter them as homeless and they don't kind of fit that formula, then their story and their experience of homelessness, I think, is devalued and not heard, because we already have these expectations of who is homeless and why everyone is homeless.
We tend to make judgments that fit our view of the world without having an understanding of where the youth has come from and what's been going on in their lives.
Judge us without getting to know us first? Not very smart, because we are a good bunch of kids. You just gotta get to know us, sit down and have a chat with us. You have a chat with us, you'll find out there's a lot more of a big difference than what they think. That we just made these choices to come down here. We didn't just make the choice to come down here. We were forced into this choice because some of our situations are different than others.
Some of the causes of youth homelessness that are not often discussed are things like just simply being a sexual minority in the city is a high probability that the young people who are experiencing difficulty as they come out or as they struggle with their sexual identity, that they often become homeless. And why is that? And it's because they sometimes come from homes and families that don't accept who they are. And when we look at the statistics, 50% of homeless youth are in fact sexual minorities. Gay, bisexual, transgender youth. That's unacceptable. We are a society that celebrates inclusion and individuality, and we know that we should be celebrating each young person as a special person unto themselves. And yet, we're looking at one of the chief causes is simply that intolerance and lack of acceptance. And most of us would say we would never throw our children out of our homes if we knew that they were gay or bisexual or whatever it might be. But apparently that is happening, or the children haven't been feeling safe in those homes.
Youth are homeless for a reason because they either made mistakes or that their parents just don't want them in their life anymore. And it's that's a huge part, because without no parents, without your brothers and sisters, what do you have in life left? It's what does life mean to you?
These things are not coincidences, and that young people who face systemic racism, poverty, and Indigenous peoples in this city who have lived histories of colonialism and assimilation and violence, that we wouldn't be surprised that people are homeless here. And I think that surprise keeps us paralyzed to actually doing something about it.
People have to understand, but for the grace of God, you or I could become homeless. And the example I always use is when we were preparing the 10-year plan, we spoke to close to 60 people that had lived experiences as homeless. And we asked them, what their story was, how did it happen to them. And the story that really stuck with me was this individual. He was a middle-aged guy. He said 6 months before we did this interview, he was living in the suburbs, had a job, had a family, and tragically their 18-year-old daughter is killed in a car accident. And as often happens in that kind of a stressful situation, the marriage couldn't handle it, and he had to leave his family. Then, dealing now with double stress of having lost his daughter, but also lost the rest of his family, he started to drink. Within 3 more months, he lost his job because of his drinking. 6 months from the day that his daughter died, he was on the streets of Edmonton. And what I say to people is, under those same circumstances, can you tell me you wouldn't find yourself homeless? So my point is, it can happen to anybody. It can happen for a wide variety of reasons. It could be simply economic, loss of a job. You know, so many of us are living paycheck to paycheck. You know, statistically, something like 25% of Canadians are living paycheck to paycheck.
And we know that 20% of all of us will suffer from a diagnosable mental health issue in our lifetime. Why should children who are going to be part of that 20% suffer so disproportionately by having to leave their homes, live in the streets, and live at such a disadvantaged and high-risk lifestyle? And so we have to look really seriously at some of the things that are known to be causes and known to be related to youth homelessness, such as sexual identity, substance use, and mental health issues. And when it comes to substance use, many people are confused and concerned and wonder why. You know, is this child using drugs because they're having to live on the streets, or is there experimentation and lifestyle of using substances the reason why that they ended up there in the first place? And it's both. But primarily we see that children who are victimized in some way, sexually, physically, emotionally, children who are at a disadvantage with their home life or their school life or their attachment to the community, they are more vulnerable to being homeless than other people. That ultimately leads them to having to cope in some manner.
But I was doing all these things and I was starting to live a really careless, reckless lifestyle, and I was only 11 years old. So I put myself in a group home, and then when I got taken back, I just didn't care anymore, and that's when I started experimenting with cocaine and shrooms and ecstasy. All those things I started when I was like 12, and even I became sexually active at that age as well, and it became an addiction to me from the moment that I started it, because I knew that there was something better out there than the life that I lived. And if that only existed in the substances that I used, then I was going to do whatever I needed to do to get a hold of those substances and to be able to escape my reality for even just a moment.
Why do kids do drugs? It's like a gateway to like hide their past.
And they're perhaps using drugs and alcohol to numb out, self-medicate, try and control the chaos that's going on in their heads.
They say, yeah, we do drugs. Yeah, we do drugs because we're emotionally depressed, we're sad, we're angry, and it helps clear it away. It helps get rid of all that anger, all that depression. And with that, that's why we do drugs.
Because I don't have to like listen to the pain anymore or suffering of like people always like neglect and abuse that I was recently been through. So it's just, that's why I usually smoke weed and drink sometimes, because I usually just hide away the pain.
And we shouldn't be judgmental of those young people that are doing that. They're simply doing those things to survive. And so when you see young people on the street who are utilizing drugs and alcohol to a degree to cope, that is what we need to remember, that it's about coping. It's not about partying, and it's not about choosing a lifestyle that has the consequence of being homeless. It's being homeless and being stressed by these other factors in life that actually make us need to use alcohol or drugs or these other coping mechanisms that are damaging to us.
I mean, in general, the youth that we see are often coping in negative ways, and that includes drug and alcohol use, mainly because it makes them feel good.
I think many young people have said to me, like, yeah, it is a way for me to cope, because I wouldn't live if I had to like mentally go through all of those things every day. It's not like I can shut it off. So I do this to numb, and I cut myself to numb, and I use meth to numb, because then I can wake up 4 days later and still be alive and keep going.
These kids need help. These kids need to be given another way to cope that isn't hurting themselves. Because really it snowballs from there. They continue, and then things at home might get worse once parents find out that their children are suffering mental health issues. And then kids can't cope with that anxiety and that stress added onto whatever else they may be feeling, and so kids tend to then leave home. Or they drop out of school, or they stop seeing their friends that they normally would. So it really snowballs into a bigger problem when kids cannot cope. And hurting themselves is not an effective way of coping with stress. It never has been, it never will be. But it is the reality of a good number of kids in high school these days.
I think Edmontonians accepting things like an at-risk youth, and like I began with, they blamed the at-risk youth. Oh, you're lazy. Like, how can a 14-year-old, he can't vote or she can't vote? This is not their choice. Whether we believe so or not, it's not their choice. They're not even legally allowed to buy drugs or alcohol. So how can we blame them?
It was just a really dysfunctional lifestyle, and I was so young, like I didn't know what to do. I was so lost, like I was literally like lost. I had no clue in the world what I wanted, where I wanted to go, who I was, who my family was, who to trust. Like I lacked everything. But what the thing was that actually I held on to was school. Like I went to Cannondale that whole time. They always let me go back. So I went there, like I tried to go every day as much as I could, even if we were drinking after class or whatever. It was where we kind of all linked up and decided what we were gonna do. So we went to school every day there, and I tried to go every day anyways. And it was like a little community, right? Of course, the youth there that went there, they had their own conflicts with each other, and there was drama at times, but it was the teachers that were always consistent with you and said, we care about you, and we want you to have an education, so it's important that you be here. And just hearing those things and hearing how real it sounded behind their voices, and they showed it, right? That actually made us keep coming back. And I can speak for other people as well, because they love that school, and like we built a community based around that. But even though we were struggling youth and we were still into all this negative stuff, we all just tried our best to go.
As a teacher, there's nothing more stressful for me to see my students sliding and not being able to help them. So it's actually quite sad, and I believe that we need to figure out a way to help our kids so that they can stay in school. Because if there's one thing we've all learned, and as teachers I know, is how education can help pull you out of stressful situations and move you forward in life. But if we don't keep these kids in school and we don't keep them functioning and we don't keep them healthy, then it becomes really hard for them to do that.
In society in general, when we have policies around things like drug use that say we expel children from schools when they've been experiencing or experimenting with substances. And what often happens when that occurs is they become disconnected from one of the chief supports in their life, which is known to be school, teachers, administration, and the community that surrounds the school. And so those things allow a child to become more and more disengaged from opportunities to stay connected to people, to have healthy relationships, to have support when they need it.
We have an obligation as society to be understanding that and providing support instead of keeping them kind of oppressed and keeping them down or pushing them aside and pretending in Edmonton we don't have those problems, right? But we do. They're out there. These kids are out there and they're struggling.
Well, what I understand is that there are actually reasonable supports for a lot of children for mental health up to 18. And then the minute they turn 18, a lot of those supports go away. And so that's one of the major gaps out there, is that people may be getting help, and then as soon as they become an adult, the programs aren't necessarily there for them anymore, and they can spiral at that time.
Once you're 18, you're legally considered an adult. And I think that that comes with a lot of responsibilities that are put on you as a citizen that many young people cannot do on their own, but they're expected to. And whether that's because they have FAS, whether that's because they have severe depression, whether that's because they've been homeless for 10 years, whatever it is, doesn't allow them to actually do things on their own. So they always, many of them, slip through the cracks of getting access to services.
They're not ready at 18, but we tend to put in a lot of expectations on these youth that are struggling with a lot of challenges, that, you know, they're an adult now and they've got to make these decisions, and they clearly are not ready.
So I went to treatment for the first time, like a real adult treatment center for the first time. So that was like a huge changing point in my life. Wallace Kendall, of course, is the one who got me in there so fast, especially after my birthday. They wouldn't take me before I turned 18. That's when Peter Smith had come into my life and the unit there, and I had a worker named Penny, and she was amazing. Like, she came to visit me at treatment, and I stuck with her for a while, and I went through treatment, I completed it, and then Wallace stuck by me through that whole time I was homeless too. Like, he was always there, like, feeding me, giving me bus tickets, making sure I had smokes, like, and then our relationship grew from there.
If you have child welfare status, if you have a social worker, sometimes you can get more supports put in a timely manner. Other times you can't. If you're under 18 and you don't have children's services status, there's very, very few options out there. And then once you turn 18, often children's services status ends, so there's that transition period where the youth are not really sure how to do things on their own, so they often fall into some pretty significant issues in their lives as well. And there's not a lot of supports out there for over 18s.
Every social service organization has a different definition for what a youth is. So say for UCAN, a youth is anyone between 12 and 24. But then if you went to another organization, it could be anyone between 12 and 30. You went to another organization, it's anyone between 12 and 18.
The research says you can't mix them together. Like you can't have a 14-year-old in the same project as a 24-year-old. That's going to be a problem.
It's really important to keep the youth separated from the older homeless population, because the youth need different supports. They need different learning opportunities and different addictions, treatment supports, that kind of a thing.
Look at the treatments that are available for young people and how hard it is sometimes to get into mental health services, how hard it is to get into addiction services, how hard it is to get into sexual trauma counseling. Not because there aren't great people out there doing it. Edmonton is full of wonderful Sexual Assault Center of Edmonton, our Region 6 Children's Services and Human Services. There's all kinds of great people out there, but the demand is very high. And so as we make our policies, as we decide what we need to do to support young people, we have to look at what the cost is of doing that, and that cost shouldn't be too high, that we should actually sacrifice children.
I think they should fund us because it'll help motivate us to get up off our ass and do something with our life instead of sitting there doing nothing.
I think the city of Edmonton should actually help more youth getting into like better programs, like drug addiction, counseling, like anything just to get them back in the motive to actually pay for their own bills, apartment, get the education that they need. Like your high school diploma is the only thing that you need to go to university and college. That's the guarantee. That's the thing that I was looking at. But it's like I don't have like so many credits to get left. It's like I still have 2 years more of school, and look at me now. I'm just sitting on the streets doing nothing all day.
We have to keep these kids in schools, and we have to do everything that we can to keep these kids in schools, give them the education that they need, that they deserve, that they have a right to have, so that they can live their lives in peace, in happiness, in harmony, in, feeling good about themselves and feeling good about the fact that they themselves are working in a society that they helped to build.
Because if they do fund for us, there's going to be more youth getting up off their asses off the streets. The more they non-fund us, the more we're going to be possible to go do crime. The more we're going to want to do something to keep our mind on something. And by them funding us, keeps the stuff like the armory, the co-op, and that open so that we have stuff to do. We have a one-track mind on something instead of just being scattered everywhere.
And they would always say, like, well, what do you want to do with your life? And whatever I wanted, they would help me work for it in a good way. If it was positive things that I wanted to change, they were there to support me 100%. And by 100%, meaning they take me to the meetings, they take me to do these things, they'd help me to organize things and start facilitating programs. And any idea that I came up with, it seemed like they thought it was like golden ideas. And when I didn't take myself seriously at times, they took me serious enough for both of us. And I would be like, okay, if you believe in me, then I need to believe in myself. And they never gave up on me.
And so when we look at long-term policies around who do we support and how do we support them, being persistent in offering those supports, being relentless in the ability to connect professionals with those young people, even if the young people are having difficulty accepting supports, because that isn't unusual either, with the stigma and the shame that those young people feel for being homeless, for the mistrust they have of adults when they've already been victimized previously. We have to understand where these young people are coming from, and therefore it is not enough for us to say that we've offered services and they were declined or they weren't successful and therefore we've done our job. We shouldn't be sleeping well at night until we know that we've actually made that connection, made that engagement, created a relationship with that young person so that they have the trust to utilize the services that we're offering, to utilize the services that are available.
It's a real privilege for when the youth feel safe enough to allow me into their world, to understand what's been going on for them, to be able to build a relationship and be able to work towards common goals that the youth identify. They're the experts in their own lives, they know their lives. And if they allow me into that world where we can work together and work on some solutions, I have access to resources, know people that we can connect the youth with.
And I stayed sober for 6 months. And then I relapsed for like 2. But then I kept trying, and like all of a sudden Wallace starts talking about this harm reduction philosophy. I was like, what the hell is harm reduction? Like, he's like, it means that you can use, but eventually you're going to wean yourself off of it. So use, and then to the point where you're eventually going to quit. Like, I can't tell you to quit using today. You're going to use, I can't stop you. But if you want to change your life and you want to do something better for yourself, then it's up to you to keep aiming for that and keep trying. Don't give up. When you mess up, know that it happens.
When the youth do kind of buy into the relationship and they feel that it is somebody that's genuine, then they buy in hard because they need that and they want that. But there's always that fear that we are going to give up on them and that we are going to be the next to abandon them.
My whole world is like crashing down because I relapsed once. And he's like, no, like, harm reduction. We're still here for you. We're not going anywhere. We're going to be here for you.
I think relationship building is the key to helping young people kind of see where they are and see where they want to be, and helping them move through whatever it is that they're experiencing to get housed.
So if we're not approaching of not building the relationships, we're not going to see that much change.
We've all accepted it and we've said, okay, well, we're just going to manage these problems. We're going to, we're going to put out the fires rather than not start them in the first place. And that expense, that approach to homelessness, we've discovered, is really expensive, because you can have homeless people and deal with them in the emergency room every couple of weeks at a hospital at extraordinary expense, thousands of dollars a night, to have someone sleep something off and deal with the injuries and addiction impacts and diabetes and other challenges, street wounds that they have.
Yeah, I broke my jaw, got beat up. I ended up in the hospital probably 5 times a month when I was homeless and stuff, due to injuries or alcohol poisoning or getting beat up. Yeah, or getting sick, because it's not really, when you're homeless, there's not many places you can go when you're sick. So then a lot of people just come here and then they just rest up.
Incredible expense. We can do that, or for way less money, we can house someone and we can put support services around them. And we've got an 80+% success rate of doing that with people through our Housing First plan. We've housed close to 3,000 people in Edmonton in the last 5 years as part of the push to end homelessness. And so even if you don't think it's morally the right thing to do, economically it makes good sense to focus on prevention and to focus on getting people off the street. And ultimately, if those people are able to be even just look after themselves better, that's better for all of us. If they're not out causing social disorder, that's better for our community. And ultimately, if those people can become productive again and get skills and get to work in an economy like this, that's good for us too. So there's no downside to helping people out of homelessness. None.
Boyle Street community is so just in shambles, and there's so many people living there in homelessness, and the kinds of services that are being provided, and just how a city that is so rich could allow its citizens to live in those conditions was disgusting.
Homeless ain't fun. We go through hell every day trying to find something to eat, trying to find places just to chill. When it's raining out and everything's closed, we stand in the rain. We walk through it just to fucking try and find nicotine, a cigarette, just to smoke. I roll my cigarettes out of fucking butts, out of an ashtray, and it's kind of sad.
As resiliency expert Michael Unger would say, they're resilient kids operating from a very narrow set of resources. whereas the average kid has family support, extended family, has material possessions, has access to money, and they're resourced. But these kids are surviving with very few resources, and ultimately very few people that they can trust or build a relationship with. So they're very alone and have a view of the world. It's a dark, frightening place.
Some days it was scary, like at nighttime and stuff, because there's like creepy people out there.
It was like literally homeless. I'm not like this cute little kid that my friends' his parents are gonna feel bad for, you know. It was like guys have machetes and guns, and people are dealing drugs like ecstasy and cocaine and crack and meth, like things that people shouldn't even come in contact with.
The most fucked up shit I've been through. Oh, when I turned 16, the most fucked up shit I was through was I was sitting on the couch with my friend. Literally, just sitting there. We were just smoking some weed, just playing video games like us fucking stoners do. And all we hear is a knock on his door. A knock. 3 knocks. And then we hear a kick. Here comes in the door. There's about 6 people that come running in. All bandanaed up. Everything. They shot my friend right in front of me. I watched my friend get killed in front of me. And they left me there, beaten down like a rag doll. And I'm talking pool of my own fucking blood. That is the most fucked up shit I have seen, because you know what's really fucked up? It was all over $10. 10 fucking measly dollars. That's the most fucked up shit I've been through. Watching my friend die in front of me. Right in front of me. And I couldn't do anything. Like, if I would have tried and did something, I'd be in the fucking same thing he is. Dead. Gone. Never fucking be seen again.
It's like, it sucks that people go to that limit just to kill a person over drugs, money, alcohol, like anything, just to get what they ask for. So I don't think that's right.
I think what's shocking and that a lot of people don't realize is that there's a duality in Edmonton. There's a north and south side. And I think what shocked to me was when I found out why a lot of the kids stay on the south side. Downtown's much more dangerous. To survive downtown, in downtown Edmonton, you probably need a knife, and you gotta be hustling drugs, or you gotta be a part of a scene that a lot of these kids aren't able to just adapt themselves into immediately.
My biggest regret is turning to the gang life and getting kicked out of the program and being homeless. Because I thought the gangs would help have my back to the fullest, but in reality it's like they don't have your back to the fullest. It's like, would they be there when you're in jail? Would they come visit you? No, they don't come visit you at all. They'll just sit there and laugh at you. And it's like, they're not your real family. Your real family is who's your real bros who actually look out to you, who actually have your back to the fullest no matter what.
Kids stay on the south side to stay safe and away from hardcore drugs and gangs and abuse and violence, which they find, in the core of downtown.
Gangs exist, drug dealing exists, hookers exist. That all exists throughout Edmonton. Edmonton's the murder capital of Canada. How can Edmontonians think gangs don't exist here? We've got the Bloods, we've got the Crips here, we've got freaking HAs, we've got all that here.
Another thing that's shocking is to find that the level of drug use inside of like Wendy's and McDonald's, if that makes any sense to you. I'm not sure. That's where you can find a lot of people who live on the streets, living in their bathrooms. And I think a lot of us go into it and it's normal. And the fact is that this is the richest community in the world. These people shouldn't be there. And us accepting that is the gruesome part.
Edmonton's fucked. It's not as nice as all the citizens think it is. It is far from it.
I mean, every winter it was hell. It was really hell. I'm never sleeping in a parkade and almost freezing to death.
Being homeless kind of sucks because in the wintertime especially, because it's cold and there's sometimes you get barred from the shelters, so there's not really where to go. So like either like Tim Hortons or like McDonald's or something and hide out there for a bit until you get kicked out.
All the libraries right now, it's actually kind of an intimidating thing to go inside of our downtown library in the middle of winter because it's full of homeless people, and that's definitely a problem.
It's hell. Easiest way to say it, it's hell. And it says it right on my arm. There's a reason I have heaven and hell. I've been in both. I've been in situations where I fucking got a gun pointed at my head and told that if I didn't give up all my stuff, I was gonna get killed. The only reason I didn't get killed was because fucking I gave up all my shit. And I walked away, thank God.
When I'm sad, I don't know, it's depressing. There's like, sometimes there's no one to talk to, so it's just you're by yourself and I don't know, it just sucks, I guess.
What I would do is just basically linger at times. I wouldn't even know what to do.
Yeah, sleeping in the river valley, sleeping in entranceways of buildings, or sleeping in dumpsters, that type of thing. That we may, as a society, can understand that there's adults out there that do that, but there's also a lot of kids in Edmonton that are doing the same thing.
People are like living in tents, wearing the same clothes every day, trying to find out where to wash them and stuff. It's crazy.
At 2 a.m. in the morning, I had nowhere to go, and I slept under a bush when it was raining. And it's pathetic that we have to go through that.
Sometimes I just hold it in to the point where I start losing it, you know. I sometimes find myself crying.
Sometimes you're seems like there's no hope and there's no one to turn to, so then I start thinking I want to kill myself or something like that, right?
When I used to just not do anything and not know where to go, I'd literally just sit in a field or at a bus stop and just not know what to do. And what are you supposed to do?
These kind of everyday issues are actually the ones that are most significant, I think, for young people, because it's not a surprise to them that they get accosted on the street. It's not a surprise that they, don't fit in at school. It's not a surprise that they can't get access to services. They know these things, and then they get discouraged, and then they say, fuck the world.
A couple of cops came up to me and some other youth there, and they're asking us about a couple of smashed windows, and they wrote down their names and stuff, and I wasn't even in the area at the time. So just because I was wearing a red jacket, my other buddy was wearing a red jacket, they just started harassing us and taking our names. And
these kids see punishment as rejection. So all we're doing is reinforcing that they don't belong, that they don't fit.
My excuse was always, is it just because I'm Native? But actually, I didn't even know anything about my culture, right? I just assumed that everybody was racist against Natives, right? Because the groups that I hung out with and stuff, just naturally, we got negative looks from people.
A lot of people just walk right by you and don't even see you. They just don't look at you and they're oh, that person's homeless. Stay away from that person or something. They're scared of us or something.
Sometimes what that one kid needs who's in distress is someone to say good morning to them every day and to let them know, hey, you know what? I notice you're here.
Stop a homeless kid in the street. Just have a talk with them. It actually makes their day when you ask us, what brought you here? Why are you here? What were the events to you coming here? It actually freaking puts a good thing into us that people want to hear our story, want to know why this happened to us, why this started.
If there's compassion and a genuineness, and I think what the youth would say probably is the key is be non-judgmental. If we can go down that road instead, then we're going to be able to engage the youth, and we'll find very quickly that they're not intimidating, they're not antisocial. They may have challenges with addictions, they may have some mental health problems, but but they're not raging against society, right? They're open to relationship, I think, if we do it the right way.
I don't know, I'm not, like, we're not, like, scary people. Like, we're probably, like, the kindest people you ever meet, actually. If you get to know us and say hi and maybe just talk to us and show that you care too, because, yeah, we're, like, probably the nicest people you ever meet. Just give us a chance, I guess.
We've all kind of accepted for a really long time that homelessness is inevitable and that poverty is inevitable. But I look at Edmonton and I look at a place that has very strong community, and we're blessed to have great economic resources and great social resources. If there is any place in the world that could demonstrate real progress towards eliminating poverty and homelessness, it's here. If not here, where? And I'm not going to give up on humanity that easily, right?
They just need help, and they just need the supports, and they need positive people in their lives. And when we can provide that, we can facilitate some positive changes.
If you want to help kids who are on the streets, you have to meet them face to face. You have to understand. You have to know what things like jib or pint are, to understand what they are, who they are. You can't just think because you've donated some money you helped an at-risk youth, because a lot of the times all you are is digging a deeper hole.
But if we're genuine and compassionate and want to help, they'll give us the space to do that.
With regard to what Edmontonians can do with regard to homeless youth, so we always look to the service providers, the addiction counselors, the doctors, the teachers, and all those folks, the police, to help with this issue. It really isn't all of their problem, it is all of our problem. And what we would like to see is Edmontonians stepping up and saying, what can I do differently as an individual? And that might be doing some simple things like giving. And I don't mean giving dollars, because that's usually the conversation that people get into. Should I give this homeless person money or not? Should I give them $5 or should I not? Does it make it worse? Will they just use it for drugs or alcohol? That's not the question. The question is about giving of yourself. Giving a piece of yourself. Being able to look a young person in the eye when you see them, and if they're homeless on the street, look at them. Shake their hand. Touch them in some way that makes them know that they are affirmed, that they exist, that they have value. Give them motivation. Give them support emotionally. Make sure that you're that one healthy person in their life. You can do that. As a member of our city, we have a wonderful city with lots of resources and lots of activities available. Help connect that young person to those things.
If we don't take responsibility for them and other people, then nothing will change. I think it's really easy to sit in your home or in a movie theater or in a place and watch something about youth homelessness or about a social issue and to feel really good about yourself, and then that's it.
This is our city's culture. These kids in the cracks are the fundamentals of our culture. They're the kids at the very bottom. And how we treat them and how we see them is a reflection on us and our society.
These kids are valuable. These kids are everything. These kids are our future. And it only takes one person to make a huge change in their lives. And that one person could be me, it could be you, it could be a parent, it could be a social worker. It could just be a passerby who lends a hand or gives someone a smile. It could make the change. So we cannot turn a blind eye to what's going on. And we need to remember that every life is valuable, that every kid is someone's sister, someone's daughter, someone's nephew, someone's grandson, and that they are important as individuals, and that we need to make them feel like they are important.
So giving a little piece of your heart is much more valuable than giving $10. And if you're concerned about somebody misusing that $10, there's no trouble in the world about thinking about how that young person is going to misuse some support, some motivation, some caring. And that's what we'd like to see most from Edmonton.
The donations help us a lot. Like, a lot. So what? You don't give us money. That's all good. Give us some clothing. Give us some food. Give us something to drink. If you see a homeless guy sitting there begging for money for food, sometimes, yes, they're begging money for not food to go get beer and that, but then there's times where they are begging for the money for food and they need that money so that they can eat, because they haven't ate for a few days or a week at a time. Like, it sickens me to see this. It really does.
for an at-risk homeless youth, I think the most important thing to know is that this is a caring, compassionate community, and that there are a lot of people who want to help. There are public services available, and there are great non-governmental organizations like Youth Empowerment Support Services, iHuman, Catholic Social Services, many great organizations in the city who you can turn to for help. If it comes down to it, you can go to the police. And more, the police are serving as a referral agency and as frontline social workers, but they recognize challenges are complex. So go where you need to go. There are people who are willing to help.
Edmonton's full of wonderful organizations and inspirational folks who do great things for young people. That's the satisfying part, is when you get people together and they want to share in that change that can happen in our city. Some of the challenges that occur is that sometimes many people in the city also have a stigma and feelings of judgment towards these young people that we're most trying to help. So stigma around addictions, mental health issues, the appearance of young people who are on the street. We often presume that they're unclean, unkempt, dangerous. These are not true situations. If any of us were left on the street without the ability to clean our clothes or our bodies or look after our mental health needs or our relationship needs, have a safe place to live and thrive and have people who care about us, we would probably look very much the same and act very much the same. And that's the stigma that's created, which places a barrier between young people and the people who are most able to support them.
If you ask a lot of these youth what they hope to get out of life, it's always fairly mainstream. Like, they want an education, they want a good job, they want a house, very mainstream things. But I think the disconnect is for them, it feels like more of a fantasy. It's something they can think about but don't actually believe they'll ever get there. Whereas most kids, they're on that journey and they're getting the help and support and they have a lot of resources to get there.
The friends that I was with, I felt like they could relate to me because they knew how it felt to not belong anywhere. They knew how it felt to be stigmatized by society, to not be seen as normal. We talk about, when we grow up or when we get older, or we want to be these things, but we never were for real about it. But when we would talk about drug dealing, or when we would talk about getting money in easy ways, stealing stuff, getting cars, or even just getting drunk, those are the things that seemed realistic to us. We could actually get these things done.
One young man will often come in and pick up the guitar and just play for 2 solid hours. And he says, sometimes I just use that to get my head back into a good space. So he gets that, but there's positive coping skills right now too. So when I see stuff like that, we can all jump on that and say, hey, how about doing that more often and come in as often as you need to play the guitar.
They have crazy dreams like that. They want to be musicians. They want to be artists. They look outside the box. Rarely do you find someone who wants to write up a resume and get a job at Tim Hortons. And I think that one thing we should encourage these kids, because we're in Edmonton, which is one of the richest communities on the planet, it's that their dreams can come true, and they can become a movie maker, and they can become an illustrator. And if there's one place that they can have that happen, it's here in Alberta and in Edmonton.
Even though that young youth out here made a mistake in their life, I think that everybody deserves a second chance in life. Honestly, what I'll do with the second chance is that I want to have my own place, pay my own rent, go back to school, because I never got a chance to finish school because I got kicked out because of my actions.
My regrets? Doing drugs, not listening to my father, not listening to his rules, just being a rebel fucker to him, being an asshole. I wish I could change that. I wish I could go back to before I started smoking, before I started doing anything, before I started running the streets. I wish I could, but unfortunately I can't. What I can do is I can better myself and get more help for myself so I can get off the streets.
My plan is to sober up, get off the streets, finish my school, then go become a youth worker, actually, and help people that were in my situation. Because a lot of people, growing up like gave a lot to me. Like I think it's just the right thing to like give back to the people that like, or the community actually, what the community did for me growing up and stuff, instead of like just being like whatever, you know. I feel the need to give back.
When you get kids who are being forced into jobs or pointed in directions that they have no interest in, it's understandable when you see them turn away. And then you realize that it's our fault, that we have to actually give them the opportunities that we have available to us. And Albertans and Edmontonians have to realize the potential of our community.
So we need to really be thinking carefully about what strategies that we can come up with that can work, and that's based around relationship.
My advice would be to be open to others, to approach people with respect, and to expect that they will do the same for you.
I think that if there's one problem that we can solve, it's this one. We can keep our youth in the schools, we can give them a brighter future, and we can certainly put out our hands and help them to get up when they fall.
So everything fell into place as I got older, but it took me years and years and years to realize that. And like being 15 to I'm only 22, that's like 7 years. And within this past 7 years, there's so much growth that has happened in my life. And now I go to Concordia and I'm going into my 3rd year in September. I'm taking psychology.
Homelessness in Edmonton is absolutely solvable. We've shown tremendous progress over the last 5 years, and I absolutely think we can get there. If there's any place that has the heart and the compassion and the prosperity to put together to end homelessness, it's Edmonton.
When you hear my story, or when people hear my story, I want them to know that, and to understand that we are all equal as people. We just come from different circumstances. And sometimes it's harder for people that have lived traumatic lives to express who they are, or to even understand who they are at given times. So to never take people for granted, because you never know when things will change for that individual, or whether your impact on that individual will have a change in their life. So to be kind to one another, and to always respect where people are at in their lives, and to respect yourself as well, and to honor who you are, but to remember that we are all equal. No one's no better or no worse, and we all deserve the same life.